So I'm trying to record this so that I can put it onto YouTube for posterity. Should we pray? Thank you, Lord, for this beautiful evening and for your love and the warmth of that love that we feel both by your Spirit and from each other in the community and fellowship of the gospel. So we commit to you this time together. I pray that you would help us to think and to understand, to hear your purpose and your will and be inspired and be thankful for all that you have done and are going to do in and through this church. Amen. Well, thank you very much for coming. As I said, I'm recording this, and what I hope to do is put it onto some YouTube, so if anyone's interested in the church, they can put it on, and that if my successor actually does want to press the button and have a look and understand what I've been doing for the last 14 years, and he or she can build on that. So, hi, new vicar. Thank you for watching. So it's nice to have an audience. So what I'm going to do, surprisingly enough, is going to talk to you for a little bit with some slides, and it's going to just sort of my thoughts of the sort of the big picture. We often get caught up on smaller things like service times or youth workers, and the big picture, because it is when you've got some idea of a big picture, then you can understand why some of the smaller decisions were made. Sometimes I think we strain the gnat and swallow the camel, is what Jesus says about the Pharisees, and we get ourselves all tied up on the little things. And if we can have a better understanding of the big things, I think that would help us. Hi, come on in. I remember why I put that there. I put that there so I can walk over here and press this. So, what sort of church do you see? It all depends, of course, and everybody comes to church perhaps has their own image of what a church should be. I've just put two images up here. One of a sofa and one of a bicycle. And you can look at the church as a pastoral entity, one that is comfortable and relaxing and meets our needs and gives us rest and helps us and revives us. Or you could see church as an alternative as a bike, which is not so comfortable to sit on, certainly not as relaxing, but certainly much a thing that will go places. Sofas don't often go places. Of course, neither of those two extremes is true, and it's about a balance between the two. But for me, sometimes the decisions we make the tension between these two things that people perceive church. It's meant to be pastoral. It's meant to be meeting my needs and the needs of the people who come. Or the alternative is, where is the church going? Right? I want to join a church that's going places, that's doing things for the kingdom of God, that's reaching out into the community, that's taking the gospel. And so one of those fundamental questions, what is it that you see when you see the church? The Sunday that we moved the family service up to church, remember we've had two 10:30 services, and then 2006 we moved the 10:30 church service to 11:30, and we moved the 10:30 service down here to 10 o'clock actually. Wasn't it? It was 10 o'clock. We've since moved it a quarter of an hour, but the first Sunday we did that, I, at the end of the service, went to the steps. End of the first service, went to the steps.
No, it's over here, because sorry.
That's all right, let's come on in. Just talking about the first time we had family service, I went to the steps to say goodbye to the family service. The family service had overrun. It was about 11:15. Now, as you know, anyone who's been a warden will know that the family service turned up 5 minutes late for the service, but the 11:30 service turned up 20 minutes early for the service, because that's just the way they do it. So there I was at the church steps with a flood of pushchairs and children and parents coming out at the same time as a group of early birds for what was then the 11:30 service having to wait to come in. And there were two reactions from the early birds. Some people said, "Who are all these young people? They are part of our church, isn't this wonderful?" And one woman said, well, I'm not waiting to go into my church, and just powered through to go fighting her way through these interlopers to get to her pew. And in some ways that sums up the sort of tension, you know, and how you see church. And I suppose the question really is growth or not. Do you want growth or not? And actually, both of us would answer yes and no, I think. So all of us would answer yes and no, right? Because, you know, a young couple, married, do we want children? Yes, you know. But when you've had them, you think, oh, wow. Actually, this is wonderful, but it's costing me an awful lot. Bill Hybels, as you know, I've quoted lots of times, is my sort of church guru on church growth. He's grew his church from 12 people in a fellowship group, a youth group, to 28,000 people, one of these mega churches in America, and he's done it in a very strategic, structured way, and he proliferates his story. He tells his story. He goes to the gym every afternoon because he has a heart, well, he thinks he has a weak heart, so he knows he has to keep fit and keep well. So at 4 o'clock every afternoon he's off to the gym. He starts work at 6, so we're allowed to do that. So one day he drove into his gym, like, you know, the Virgin Active here or whatever. As he's driving in, there's a big banner outside, and it says, "New members welcome." So they're doing a recruitment drive to increase the membership of the club. His initial thought, his amygdala reaction is, oh no. Right? So there's the guy who knows all about growth, understands the dynamics, and when he realizes that there's going to be more people, he's going to have to walk further in the parking lot because there are more people parked. The showers are going to be smellier and more used. The gym machines are going to be queued up because his favourite one's going to be used. His immediate reaction is, I don't want growth because it's not meeting my needs. So I think all of us know what that means, but also probably all of us know we need to do this growth. And there's that tension, the same sort of pastoral, missional dimension. Now, it won't surprise you. Oh, right, here we go. That I go for growth, that's my agenda. The Great Decline. There are lots of graphs available. I've just put a few up. Everybody knows, it goes without me showing too many graphs, doesn't it, that church attendance is declining, certainly in the Western cultures. Not in Nigeria and Africa and Asia, but in the US and in the UK, it's going down and to the right. There's the church attendance in England of all the different denominations. And you can see Pentecostal is probably a little bit fatter than it was up there, but Roman Catholic, Anglican, it's all down and to the right. Church of Ireland, 91, 95, 2000, 2004, whatever that means, I don't know what 100% was, but it's going down, all right? I'm sorry I haven't got the metrics with me, but there you are. So I think it's self-evident that growth has to be on the church agenda or death. So growth has to be for two reasons. Obviously, for the sustaining the organisation, we have to now reverse that trend, otherwise it will keep going down and to the right. But secondly, because Jesus told us to go and grow the church and make disciples. It's a command. So I don't think it's a question about growth. I'm not sure why I have to keep talking about it and why we have to keep fighting to make decisions that enable growth, but maybe that will ever be so. Now, we've reviewed the church over the 14 years that I have been here. We've had various analyses of different perspectives, different ways of looking at it. When I arrived, when you come to, when you apply to be a vicar, you are given the parish profile, and that is a document prepared which describes the state and activities and the finance of the church. Gavin's in charge of writing that, so if you want anything in there, talk to him. And I got the parish profile, and I remember, I should have brought it with me actually from 2000, which was prepared, and I remember it talking quite a lot about a purpose-driven church. Rick Warren's book, that was the agenda that that Jimmy Monroe had been working with. I was very excited by it. I thought it was a church that was wanting to grow and expand. They've just completed these buildings. They're looking forward to filling them full of people. And so I came thinking, well, that's what you want, that's what I want, we're going to go with it. So I had a response, and I preached a series of sermons in June 2001, which set out the agenda of how I thought we should do that. I talked about the purpose of the church, to declare the wonders of God. The purpose of God is to declare God's wonders from Pentecost, Acts 2, and then talk about diversity with different languages but the same gospel. And then we looked at the next week, June the 10th, the problems facing the church, and we talked about being wise. We talked about years of plenty and years of difficulty. And we need to speak in a language that people understand, with the problem of relevance. And then we looked at the paradigm of the church. It's something beginning with P, as Chris Matchett said. Everyone will think it's paradigm, but it's paradigm. And then I talked about what I called a platform strategy, and I'll explain that in a little minute. And then we talked about, on 24, the propagation of the church and having a variety of worship styles rather than a one-size-fits-all, which ends up being something of nothing. Nobody particularly is happy with it, so we're having a diversity of worship styles. So I set that up, and then in June, in September, we started the family worship every week. November 2001, we started the evening praise once a week, and that has continued for 14 years plus. The bishop came and visited every parish in 2004 and asked us to do a sort of a review of what we were doing and produce it in a book, Build Your Church, Lord, I think it's called, and every parish has a sort of a review of where they were at that point. We did a course called Clearing Our Vision in 2007 and a sort of a smaller version of that in 2009. In 2010 we had a morning services questionnaire. It's all in the files here, if anybody wants to look at that one I've got. And then in 2014, last year, we had a survey commissioned with Chris Hollis, it's sort of a scientific sample of people that were asked various questions and coming up with certain conclusions which we felt were the representative of where we were as a church. So we've done a fair amount of making sure that we're on the right track, understanding where we are and what we're doing and where we think we're going. So we have plenty of those. All through the years, I've been consistent about the plan. Because if you're going to grow, then you need to plan. Like family planning, isn't it? You're going to need to build a nursery if you're going to have a child. You're going to have to recognise what growth needs. If you don't plan, possibly nothing could happen. Or the worst thing is that things could happen and you're not ready for them. So actually we had a sort of a strategy, a plan. And it doesn't really matter which plan you use. I came up with one, and I guess that was my job to come up with some ideas. So just let me recap on this platform thing. I'm sure you all know it. But the idea was that you sort of thought of what we do in terms of 3 platforms. And we call this one the community. So this is everyone who possibly could come to St Philip and St James, and obviously there are lots of people worshipping in Hollywood who go to other churches, but quite a lot of people who don't go to church. In fact, the majority of people don't go to church, and they're all potential church members of us. We've got Presbyterians and Catholics and Baptists and all sorts of people turning up, so everybody's fair game, I think, for being invited. This is what I call the connected. So these are people who have some sort of connection with us. I mean, there may be those who are paying their £10 a month so they can have a funeral here. Don't tell them they can have a funeral for free, but we'll just keep going with the £10 a year. There are the people who have turned up at our concerts, people who have been invited and come back every time. They go, what a wonderful place, I think I'll come on Sunday. And they're sort of, tentatively, or they're regular worshippers once a year at Christmas. Connected. We've got a lot of connected people in our church. And then the third platform is this, what I call committed. How do you measure committed? I guess they're worshipping with us at least once or twice a month. They would count themselves as committed. They're giving financially. They might be using their gifts. There are some people here who think they're committed, but I think church attendance probably is the measure of commitment. And of course, growth is about getting more people on this top level. All right. I don't think it counts having more people connected. There's an evangelist called Daniel Cousins, tells a story. He goes fishing, all weekend fishing. He comes back and his wife says, did you catch anything? He says, no, but I influenced a lot. And Jesus told us to be fishers of men, not influencers. And churches are great at having events and publicity and spending lots of money on missions and not actually increasing this committed platform. And we've done lots of this stuff, and we say, great, we all went along and sang their hymns, and we just might have influenced a few people, but we've not saved any. So let's not count the maybes. It's the committed. How do we increase that? Because a lot of mission activity is going to the community and getting them connected. Well, we've been doing that very well for a long time. This platform is huge, absolutely huge, of connected people. People who will come back, who know what we're like, who want for whom we have the permission to invite again. The people who know us. The real challenge is how to move our connected people to be committed. And not only that, one of the problems with doing that is that if this platform is not big enough, when you put more people on it, people either they fall off because there's no room for them, or the people already on fall off. So part of and actually you'll find there are people trying to do this all the time in an Anglican church. People who's come to a funeral service and actually the ministry of the church and the liturgy and the word touches them, the Spirit works, and they turn up for a few Sundays after that. Is there a place for them? Or weddings, or baptisms, or all the time, or people just moving, coming in and trying us out, people coming to a new church, new area, coming to church, or people inviting people. Well, why don't you come to church and find? I think we don't have to try very hard at that. I think that's happening all the time. The problem is that they fall off. I can think of maybe I can't think, I should have written them down. I guess 100 families that have come to our family worship over the 14 years and have not stayed. People who have been for a few months or even a few years, if children have been, and then they don't, we think about, where were they? Who were they? Where were they? So the plan for growth was to increase this platform, to make it bigger, so that when people turned up, there was space for them. And we increased it by increasing the number of services that we did on a Sunday. So we had the family service, which was children-centred. There were, unsurprisingly, a lot of families for whom the 11:30 liturgical service is irrelevant to their children. And the model is that you suffer for 10 minutes and then you go and have fun in Sunday school. But they never engage in church themselves. The building is the thing you're quiet in before you go out. So we've now created a service where children want to be in, and when they're in, it is their church, and they're engaged and they have fun for not just 10 minutes. They're there for 20, 25 minutes, and then they go and have some more fun. So, and it's working. Families say that's what we want for our children. There's space for us on this. There wasn't space on the platform. If I brought my noisy kids, I was embarrassed because I knew it was upsetting other people in the pews, and therefore I'm not going to come again. Or I came and they were so noisy, the people who've been worshipping there for 60 years went because they couldn't cope with noisy kids. You've just got to give us space. Now we come together occasionally and we all that, etc. So that's important. But that's what we did. And then we did an evening service. We did a 7 o'clock service. Why? Because young people want to sing 4 or 5 worship songs together, and so do some of us. Rather than a hymn, they want to sing songs that are a bit more, the melodies are a bit more emotional. We sing one after the other to engage our emotions. We have drums and guitars and vocals and harmonies because that's the sort of music they're listening to. It's more relevant. And that's been going for, as you know, for 14 years as Connect and worship, evening worship and worship, etc. And all sorts of things we called it. I think there's 40, 45 people who worship there on a Saturday night. There's another platform. All we did was, it's like Tesco's. Tesco's wanted to increase their sales. They increased the number of checkouts. Because they realised that when people went shopping at Tesco's and they queued for 20 minutes to check out, they weren't going to come back again. Increase the checkouts, turn up at the queue, you're in through 5 minutes, you're out. I think, well, that's very good, we'll go back there. Just build it, and they will come, as they said. So that's what we did. We increased the platform. So that was the plan for growth. The idea of parallel church ministry is the fact that it's basically church planting. The bishop's strategy, one of the bishop's strategies in 2015 is to plant churches. There are 2 churches they've planted in the diocese, one in the Brannion estate in Craiger, and one in Newtonards. And what they are like our family worship, but they are happening in non-church buildings, and they're attracting a new congregation, and they have a new leadership, and they have a leader. And that church planting strategy has been going for years and years. And it works because, people who weren't being used in church, because there were enough people preaching and leading and handing out hymn books and stuff, suddenly turn up at this and finally have a job. And new people turn up because it's small, they're welcomed and they have a job to do, so it's an easy way to grow. So I thought, well, why don't we just plant a church in our church rather than on the Redburn estate or wherever it is? Let's have it here, which is effectively what we've done. We've planted a church within the church. So we can share the same building, we can share the same vicar and the same curate and the same staff, and we can even meet together for coffee between the services. So that's really, and it's parallel. It's another church. Now people have found that difficult, particularly the people for whom the liturgical worship has been important for so long. They found it difficult that there is another church, that another congregation. And there has been the cost of growth, because what used to be an all-age service suddenly became a service for the 50-pluses, because all the children have gone to the family worship. And that's difficult. I can understand how that difficult that is. I would argue that the children are not far away. If you want to see them once a month, there is a place to go and see them. But that idea of there being another different church is a challenge. But it's one that's working. It's parallel. And the good news is we can share resources. The bad news is you don't know everybody. And they'll be in your way when you're trying to get into church 20 minutes before the service. Parallel church ministry. The next thing is staffing for growth. It's interesting. My notes and my PowerPoints don't. Yeah. The idea for staffing for growth, it's a bit like the Tesco's scenario. You recognise that if you have to wait for the right volunteer with the right gifts and the right available time to turn up to do a strategic task, it may never happen. So if you want it to happen, you have to find someone who is willing to lead it and to do it. And we have a whole generation of people who are very busy. Both husband and wife are working because they're able to, and they're professionals, and they have a mortgage to keep, and they have but a lot of disposable income. They have no time to lead youth groups and able to do that. They're too busy doing other things. But they do have financial resources. And if we can convince them that to share some of those financial resources together, to come together, we can buy someone who will do the youth work, or the children's work, or the administration, or whatever it is we're trying to get volunteers to do. And that, again, I think has been a challenge sometimes, as I've talked about. Some people find it difficult that we are employing people to do things that volunteers could do. And the volunteers could do, but actually we don't have them, and we need it to be done. So if you look at any successful, growing church, you will find that there are staff associated with it. And with the staff comes management and costs and everything else, but with it comes this consistent structure of growth that accommodates people, that isn't dependent on people just burning it. Volunteers burn out very, very easily if you ask them to do the amount of things that we do. If you imagine, most traditional church activities are monthly. Mothers' Union, Men's Society. There are monthly occasions. We're doing youth work 3 nights a week. Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Okay? Every week, 3 nights a week. So I don't know what the multiplication rate is. It's 12 times as much as organising a Mothers' Union meeting. So where are who's going to do that? Well, the answer is some volunteers are going to help with some of it, but we need a key person in the middle. That's what youth work is. It's no good doing youth work monthly. They won't remember which week of the month it is that they're meeting. You've lost them. So staffing for growth, and the last thing is commitment for growth. And I just touched on this before. It's not that the younger generation are not committed. It is that they are over-committed, because they have many more things to do with their time and their children's time than the generation, their grandparents' generation, or their parents' generation. There's more money, there's more sport, there's more disposable income, there's more opportunities to do things. You travel, and asking people to commit the amount of time that is necessary to run some of these things it's not that they're committed, not committed, it is they are over-committed. And so they come and say, yes, I'm happy to be involved, but here is the boundaries. I can do this, I can do it well, but only at this boundary. Don't ask me to do more. And when I turn up, for instance, if they're turning up to sweep the leaves, don't waste my time. Are there brooms there? Are there bags there? Are there rakes? That, as an example, you have to create a structure in which people if there's going to be a committee, here's a business guy, he's running a bank or help, whatever it is, says, okay, I'll serve on the committee. If he turns up at the committee and there isn't the admin preparation done, and we talk about, there's no agenda, and he says, I'd love to give my time, but you're wasting it. Can we have a structure in which I can come in, look at this balance sheet, I understand it because that's what I do, and I help you understand it, and I'll do what I can do, but then I'm going to go and play football with my son because it's his football night. So we've got to understand that you can't criticise people for not being committed. It is a different generation. And I've said this importantly as well. 50 years ago, a lot of wives didn't work. Now most wives do work, and most grannies are looking after the children of the wives. So not only have you lost your non-working wives as a resource, you've lost the grannies as well. And we could say it's wrong, we can say it's better for mums to stay at home and look after children, we can make any value statements we like. That's how it is. And if we're going to say only women, who can afford to do this, this sort of level of commitment can join, it will be small. That's the problem. That's why we have Jubilate. Because there are a lot of people who like singing in the church, but they cannot turn up on Wednesdays, the choir practice, Sunday morning for the singing, and Sunday evening. We've decreased Sunday evening twice a month. Now, what that tells me is, firstly, excuse me a moment. That tells me that I'm going to go and turn him on again, because I videoed last week and it went off at half an hour, because so I'm just going to restart this. Thank you, excuse me. So we've lost that resource of working women, and therefore the availability of the dads as well, and the men. So, and that's how it is. Oh, the choir, I'm just saying, People can't make that grade of commitment. And that's what you need for a choir, because you need to practice, you need to be out, singing the parts. If you haven't got enough basses, you can't do a certain... So there is that commitment. If you can't make that commitment, you can't be in the choir. But I understand that, but people want to sing and use their voices. So we have Jubilati, which is an occasional choir to which people can come, and more people are being used, and Jubilati is very good news. So it's about thinking, how do we engage and use the gifts that we've got on the terms that they give, not on our terms. Right. So this is the last section, and it's about the future. And if you were listening on Sunday to my sermon, it's basically the same thing. We've got a structure. We've worked hard at creating this very busy structure. 5 services. I know it's busy. Bishop keeps saying, have you still got 5 services? Yes. I mean, if I was out in a rural parish with 2 or 3 parishes, 5 services would be easy meat for a Sunday business. I'd be doing 6 and I'd have to travel from one to the other. So this isn't difficult. I'm all in the same place. In fact, I don't do all 5. I've got other people who do some of them. So this is easy. So why do you keep asking me if I'm still doing it? Yes, we've got 5. Yes, they're all important. Yes, we get 15 at 5:30 service in the evening. Is it worth doing? Yes. 8 o'clock communion. Great time to go to church. 6 people turn up. That's okay. Why not keep doing that? So why would you not do any of those? We have the resources. I mean, we're struggling now with music at 7 o'clock. I've mentioned it once or twice. It's not an impossible task to find musicians. It's not an impossible task to keep that going. It is hard work. Of course it is, to do all of them. But why would you take that structure down? Why would you make it more difficult for people to come and be with us? These are not insurmountable. Keep the structure. Maintain the structure. Maintain the weekly service pattern. Please, we've worked hard. And the next thing about maintaining the structure is to think seriously about the financial commitment. I think we still haven't got an understanding of what that means. I looked down, I don't know who gives what, but I looked down the sort of giving profile of the amounts that were given. And there are quite a lot of people who give £25 a month. Well, you don't get a meal out for £25, and they must be eating a meal out a month. And every so often, one of my pensioners I go and visit, and they give me their envelope because they weren't coming into church, right? And they don't have to write the amount on the outside. They don't realise you're meant to open the envelope and then write what you find on the inside. But they write it on the outside, so I get to see what it is. And I think, you're giving £20 a week, dear. It's £1,000 a year on a pension. So what's going on here? And I know there are other people who are 2 incomes, and well, I don't know they're giving, but I can't imagine. By just putting the sums together, I can't imagine that that's proportional. So we've got to realise that if we all did more, we would not have any of these problems. But the few give most, and everybody else thinks it's someone else's problem. And what you need, I believe, is permission to say it. And Mark and I had a discussion at Vestry a couple of months ago, trying to get commitment and permission to challenge. Now, every time you do, you're always talking about money. Well, just give us £1,000 a year and I'll stop talking about money. Just let's be real about this. I mean, people are, I don't know what the average income is for Hollywood. But people are certainly not tithing. I doubt if they're giving 1 or 2%, some of them. It's ridiculous if you want to make this thing happen. If it's just paying for what you want, this comfortable seat that comes and does the pastoral amount, and you haven't got young people so you don't have to worry about youth workers, then I can understand that. But that's not what the church needs. The church needs to grow in. It's what Jesus calls us to do. So there we are, that's the tension. And we need permission to be able to say it and to challenge and to cope with the backlash. So that's one part of the future. Maintain the structure. Secondly, and this was on Sunday as well, about loving. Intentionally build relationships. And this is just like looking at bank balance and saying, well, there's my disposable income and I will give that amount of money, a proportion. Why don't we do that with our diaries as well? And you know, we're all very busy. We can all fill our diaries probably twice over with things that we can do, with friends to visit, friends to see. We haven't had them for a while. It's about time we did. Northern Ireland, you've all got family not far away, and that's a tremendous blessing, but it also fills up your diary and commitment. Why not tithe your time? And that's at 10%. That's, you know, 2 hours a week, or 1 hour a week. And this week, this hour, I'm going to spend either praying for somebody to make this leap, or who has tried to make this leap, or I'm going to spend that hour phoning them up, or writing them a note, or thinking about them, doing something that increases that relational capacity. You know, we who are in the church are the hosts. And when the guests come in through the door, it's our responsibility to welcome them. It's our responsibility to engage them, to include them. And that doesn't just mean welcome at the door. It means, you know, you're John, I'm Roger. Well, John, you know, in your head you're going, John could be my friend for the next 20 years in this church. He's going to be someone who's going to sweep leaves with me. He's going to come on the Men's Society outing with me. I'm going to attend his mother's funeral. This is somebody who God has brought into my church, into my life, and I'm going to intentionally include them and not just go and see my friends. Right. So that, I think, is the end of what I want to say. And it's open for questions and comments and discussion, if you like. If not, you can go ahead.
The connected, the middle one there,
yes.
Are they givers in the church? Do they actually give?
Well, it all depends how you know, it's a bit muddy. I mean, I would, you know, the people who put £10 or £50 a year, you know, they'll buy the church magazine, they think they're contributing to the church, but they're not really committed. I wouldn't say they were committed members of the church, you know. I would measure commitment as attendance.
Because we know a lot of people around where we are
yes.
who are connected, and they could be very good givers. But
yeah, you know, I think we have to disconnect giving really from. I mean, I think that's a tricky one because people don't like to know that the money thing.
Yeah.
For me, committed is attending, being involved. Yeah, I think that's commitment. Commitment of time, commitment of money usually follows, doesn't it? You know, when you see the need, when you get involved, when you know. I brought you these. I don't know whether you've got these. I handed them out yesterday. If you haven't got one, you have one. These are our confirmands. I mean, you need to look at this and go, well, all the money I have given and the time I have given has created an environment where there are 10 people who stood up and said they were going to follow Jesus on Sunday. You know, and my vision is I'm going to keep giving money so that these 9 young people in whatever it is, 15 years' time, are looking to stand on Select Vestry because they want to, or whatever it is. I want to keep investing in these people. You know the joke about the two vicars? One's walking around the church and the other, and the guy said, I've got a real problem with bats. Can't get rid of them. And he says, oh, well, we sorted ours out. What do you do? He says, well, we confirmed them. And then you never see them again. You know, and actually that's the model, that's the expectation for a lot of churches. They go at confirmation and they come back with their babies to be baptized. Crazy. That's the most important time of their life, between 14 and 34 is when you know they have the life choices to make. So that's what we.
Sometimes we used to have not negotiating. Does the bishop do a deanery confirmation here? I mean, is it just?
He's done various things. This year, because of Year of Mission, he said he'll confirm however many wherever. So he's just doing lots of them. But he has tried to get us to combine.
I just wondered whether that meant that these were the only 2 churches that actually had confirmation.
No, there were lots of others about. It's just that they were just convenient this year.
Roger, if you weren't leaving,
say pass to this question if you want. If you weren't leaving, where do you see the greatest potential for the future in this particular church that you would want to exploit and develop?
Well, the bishop said, what does Hollywood need? And when I visited him, I was telling him about my leaving. And just the first reaction is usually the truthful one. And I said, you need somebody who is more relational than I am. Because I think I'm good on structures and vision and strategy. I'm good at chairing meetings and making things happen. And if people stand up and are rude, I can just about take them down. But I'm not very relational. I don't. And actually, the organisation often follows the idiosyncrasies of the leader. And so what I hope and pray for my successor is he's somebody who's really good at just getting alongside and making things happen, so that there are more people willing to lead fellowship groups and invest in the relationships with others. There's more relational activity going. We've done the church dinners last year with 10 of them. Just a little aside. We just need more social events. And not big monster ones, okay? The big monster ones take an awful lot of preparation, and at the end of it, when we've cleared up at 2 o'clock in the morning, we said, that was great. Wasn't it lovely we had 150 people? Let's not do it again for a while, all right? And you spend all your time in the kitchen not talking to the people. So the church dinners had 10, 20, 30 people. Minimise the preparation. Maximise the relational activity. People meeting people they didn't know, across the pew, that sort of thing. Those are easy. Just need the right people organising them, and £10, everybody was happy. More of those, more cross-linking, relational stuff. More people just good at welcoming and including, and I think a more relational vicar would attract those sorts of people into leadership, and that would proliferate into the. So that's, I think, where we're weak. If I was staying, I would take a course on how to be relational. Bill Hybels. I probably like him because he's like me, or I want to be like him. His wife, what they call mercy gift. His wives have a mercy gift, which is this ability to empathise and be nice to people. And apparently she said to Bill, just go and stand next to somebody with mercy gift, and he and I probably aren't good at, not very approachable, happy to, and I think a softer, relational, more confident, more emotionally empathetic person will attract that sort of ethos and build that sort of thing, as long as he's tough enough to take on the bullets.
Because a relational person is not necessarily going to have the ability to plan, to structure the whole church family, and to see how the steps that need to be taken and the sequence of those steps in order to get to see a 5-year mission actually materialise. A very relational person could be a very pleasant individual to have around, but wouldn't be alert to either the potential that's represented within the congregation as a whole, or have much of a clue as to how to draw out and maximise that.
Yeah. If I was staying, I would continue to develop the church manager role, because Sarah has taken more. I've trusted her more and more. It took me a long time to trust the personnel committee to a point to actually have the principle of me letting go some of the smaller stuff. And when we did, it took me a long time to actually, be happy with and we got the right person. And I'm just letting that admin go, which now gives me space to do the thing which I find hardest, which is remembering birthdays and, pastoring and that sort of stuff, and being a more relational person. So I would develop that, which would then structure the relational stuff, Follow up the funerals. I mean, I don't follow up funerals, but it was a wonderful ministry to be able to do that. And we could do that with people, there's lots of relational stuff that could happen. That's what I would do, yeah.
Can I turn Gavin's question around? I think it's interesting you mentioned Jimmy and what you inherited, and I do think that whoever follows you, the church is a really good place because of a lot of stuff that you've done. A lot of the structure and the direction is really healthy and positive. What would you do different if you were starting over?
I'd be more relational. I think I've upset some people because I've just not loved them enough. I've church-fronted them. Come on then, rather than just saying, come on, let's talk. And that's because of my own insecurity, rather than, I'm actually a very vulnerable person, so I have a strong exterior to protect the vulnerable person. And if I was more integrated, more secure, I wouldn't worry so much about being vulnerable. But actually, I've just said, you want to fight, I'll give you a fight. And that doesn't work. Because everybody else says, gosh, he's like that, I'm not talking to him. So that's what I would do. I would be a bit softer.
But your structures you would use to...
Oh, wouldn't change the structure. Yeah. I think this is right, isn't it?
Yeah.
No negotiation. This is obviously the best thing in the world. Everybody knows that.
Roger, you made the point very clearly about structures and so on. If there are discussions or resources become tight and so on, and there's a discussion about a structure, or combining services, or making some services less regular, what factors would you want us to take into account as we discuss?
Well, yeah, and that's a very good question. After you originally ran. No, we won't. I've got my visual aid. I've been thinking about this and I haven't used it yet. Okay, so here we go.
It's a plant.
It's a plant. Okay, so if you think of the committed people of the church, they're going to come hell or high water. All right. If you almost do anything to the church, they're still going to turn up because this is their church. And they're like Duplo that is fixed in. You've clicked them in, they're pretty secure. But then what we've done, we've added a fair number of other people who haven't really been clicked in. They're part of the church, they attend, but they don't turn up to select general vestry meetings. But they're still, and the numbers have increased, and quite a lot of people, are part of that, which is good. Right, does it work? Yeah. The idea is that if you change things, that's what happens. The people who are secure stay. The people who aren't so secure, when you change things, change a vicar even, just me moving and a new person coming without any change of structure, will be a shake of the tree and things will fall off. And Jimmy had a great pattern here. It was a monthly family service, a monthly communion, 2 prayer book communions. And a lot of churches had done that. Each Sunday a different thing. Everybody gets a bit of something in the month, which works just about for the people in the church. But if you're trying to access that from outside, it's impossible. Because you, as a young family, was it family service the first or the third? Is it the first or the third? Young families wake up at 9:30 and go, shall we go to church or not? That's what they do. And if it's yes or no. And they need to, and so that, it's nice if they turn up to family worship, and it's great. The worst thing, the very worst thing that happens is they do it and they turn up and it's not family worship. Because they're just, no, Next time they wake up, is it not? Oh, let's go back to bed. So the fringy people, the uncommitted people, the maybe people who are trying to do this thing will be totally put off by a monthly thing rather than a regular thing. So you have to do it every week. It has to be consistent. That's my sort of raison d'etre. Think of those people outside, and it costs the people inside because we have to keep doing it. But if you're trying to access, I had Chris Matchett told me a story of a vicar who was trying to get his vestry, to understand what it was like to come into church if you didn't know what was going on. It's a rural parish, and in rural parishes, I understand, everybody knows everybody. You're either Church of Ireland, or you're Catholic, or you're Presbyterian, and everybody's somebody, yeah? But of course, it's changing in the countryside, and there are, villages with new estates and people moving in. It's getting mixed up. But vestry is kind of, I understand new people coming in. We know who's a member of our church. So he gave them all £1 this vicar, gave them all £1. He said, by the next vestry meeting, I want you to go into the town and go into a bookies and make a bet, knowing that none of them had ever been into a bookies and knew how to make a bet. And they all came back and said, now we understand. Because they walked into an environment they didn't know, with a whole lot of people who seemed to know what was going on. They had to go through some sort of process with this £1. And that whole experience was very similar to people walking to church going, what are these books? Where do I sit? When do I stand? Do I know anybody? I look stupid. So just think about the fringe. And that's at a detriment to what I want. It's watering down what I want because it's different, but just think about the fringe. So that's why I think the structures shouldn't be reduced. Oh, sorry, I'm talking to you, aren't I? That's why I don't think the structure needs to be reduced. And instead of saying there's a problem, let's reduce it, you think there's a problem, how do we solve this? How do we solve this? And the answer to the question, have we got any musicians for 7 o'clock, for the 7 o'clock service, if the vestry are unable to fund it, then I would go and find if I was here, I would go and find one of my givers and say, I have a problem, can I have £2,000 over the next couple of months to solve this? Or however much it costs. And that's how I would solve it. But it's much better if the vestry own it. Because if the vestry own it and say, this is important, we must solve this, then it's going to be sustainable. In the past, when I've solved it without the vestry, like the Solomon Foundation, eventually it comes back to the vestry. And they have to own it. And it's getting the vestry to own it on behalf of the church. This is our problem. This is the way we are going to do it. We are not going to reduce. We're going to continue to expand. So I think that answers your question. Any more? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Colin.
One thing I'm aware of, I suppose, a bit of a mixed bag in terms of services, but the 11:30 service, people drop off it, sadly, because they drop off.
Natural
reasons. And so it's hard to feed into that service because I think it suits a certain group type of people to come. My worry would be is the 9:45 has almost had its first generation through now, which is 10, 11, 12 years. And the trick is, how do we stop people dropping off that? Because maybe in some people's minds, parents were going to graduate to the 11:30 service as their children grew up, but I don't think that's actually realistic because they haven't grown up with that. And it's how we stop it. You're trying to feed into that platform, which is supposed to be the 9:45 because that's the age profile. And it's how you stop ones whose children are no longer going to be headed on to university, dropping off, almost like there's a gap between the two platforms out by accident. How do you stop them dropping off? And I think that goes back to your relational comment.
Yeah.
That while we have them for 12 years, or whatever it is they're at the age of their children, if we don't get them into fellowship groups or some other group, I think there's a great danger that they will also drop off, depending on their own commitment, of course. But how? And I think that's I think if you were staying, I'd be saying to you, is that first, because we're going to go through our first set of graduates in a sense, are the parents going to stay with us? I'm just wondering, is there another, because they're not going to graduate to the 11:30. No. In a sense.
Firstly, they're not going to graduate to 11:30. Several points there, very good points, very good questions. They're not going to graduate to 11:30 because they would have done it by now. They would have done. Secondly, the 11:30 is growing. I mean, it's growing even though people are dying from it. There are new faces there, and of younger generation, people who choose that as their style of worship. And Chris and Claire are one couple who's just had a baby. In 6 to 9 months' time, that child will not be able to handle 11:30. They will start coming to family worship, and it might be in 18 years' time they come back, or they vary. But it's not impossible. Stephanie and Peter, another couple who have joined. There are other people of older generation who have joined. So I think as a service, there's no reason why it can't grow on its own merits. It's not dying, it just needs evangelizing. People who go there need to invite their friends to it, who enjoy that sort of thing. And if it's not what their friends want, what can we do to change it? Do they want more harp music, or do they want more, there are ways of invigorating that service, and that means effort, but I think 11:30 doesn't have to die. That you're right about the family worship, and the answer, I think, is men. I talked to Jeffrey about this. If you talk to Christian Vision for Men about their strategy for men, if a man becomes converted, the family follow. Women, no problem. The wives will follow in. The children, no problem at all. You get the men. So I think that's the answer to family work. You find the men, you engage them somehow. And Christian Vision for Men got lots of strategies for that. It's not rocket science, understanding men. Ask a woman, they all understand men. That's the answer. You're absolutely, it's relational, and I think it's about the men. Because you usually end up with just the women.
Yeah.
So that's the answer.
And also, some people graduate onto the 7 o'clock, which is why you need to have, especially the young people who are going on to the youth ministry afterwards. That's kind of natural. So that's again why you need to keep that.
I would say that's the case with my family, for example. We've sort of graduated from
you're at that sort of stage
to the 7. It's a very natural step, actually.
It's a much easier step, isn't it? And especially because you're basically in there with your children, and the time just goes out in the same way as they do.
I was very manly approach them.
Okay. Shall we call it a day? Thank you very much for listening. I hope I don't harangue you. You can see this is my passion. I could give you 2 hours of this stuff. I mean, it is my passion, and maybe I'll do some more of this stuff when I'm not running the show. But it's not. I don't think it's rocket science. I really don't think it's rocket science. It's just about getting the people to do the right things at the right time. And we've got plenty of spare pews and seats at all the services. We've got lots of lovely people, and we've got the gospel. Anything else? The Lord will add to our number. We just need to be thought out about it and committed to it. And the Lord will bring somebody, I know, who will continue to lead and inspire and have energy, emotional and everything else that's necessary to do it. So I'm very excited for you. Shall we pray? Thank you, Heavenly Father, for the church, your hope for the world. For we hold within the earthen vessel of our organisation the treasure, which is the good news of Jesus Christ, the gospel, that is the message of salvation, bringing men and women and children to know you, to know your love and your forgiveness, to become your children by adoption. So we pray, Lord, that you would help us in our frailty and in our sinfulness and our weakness and our failures, just to glorify you and give thanks to you and commit to you the future of this church, knowing that you're a good God who has blessed us and will continue to bless us. Should we say the grace? The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Now look at all these people on the floor here. You've done that before, haven't you?